Broadcast Center. This is the 6 o'clock Kdlh News with the entire Kdlh News team.
This is where it all began at 3:30 this morning after a Burlington Northern train car derailed, spilling a mix of 15 chemicals into the Nemadji River just south of Superior. Thanks for joining us. The train derailment and chemical spill quickly sent a vapor cloud into the sky above the Twin Ports. Now, 14.5 hours later, tens of thousands of people who were immediately evacuated are just beginning to return home. We'll begin our extensive coverage tonight with an up-close look at the spill itself. Coast Guard officials have confirmed that at least one car is still leaking a benzene-based chemical. Each Burlington Northern car is capable of transporting 24,000 gallons. Booms have now been set up in the Nemadji River at highways 2 and 53 to keep the spill from reaching Lake Superior. Coast Guard officials say the railroad is cooperating with the cleanup effort.
Relatively low then, and the headaches.
Burlington Northern Railroad has accepted financial responsibility for the incident, so they're going to bear all the cleanup costs. But there's no estimate right now as to how much it's going to cost.
A total of 14 rail cars derailed on a bridge spanning the Nemadji River. Wisconsin and Minnesota officials have been watching today's situation very carefully. Douglas County has been declared a state of emergency by Governor Tommy Thompson. Thompson flew over the spill and derailment site today to survey the damage firsthand and see what could be done.
I'm the mayor here in Superior.
I think the whole area should be complimented for the orderly way that they handled this emergency, and I'm just very happy that people's lives and health were taken care of. And that
Thompson also applauded the efforts of Douglas County residents today. Minnesota state officials, including Governor Arne Carlson, have already made initial assessments of the accident. Today, Carlson credited law enforcement personnel and residents for their response to the incident. Carlson says the state will help monitor the environmental and health threats that may persist. He says even though the investigation into why this happened falls under federal jurisdiction, Minnesota and Wisconsin will push for answers.
People have a perfect right to live in a reasonably safe environment, and it just seems, and I may be wrong, but about every 3 weeks we read about one of these spills somewhere in America.
If any emergency relief is needed, Carlson says the state will provide whatever is needed. Well, after all afternoon long, a chemical cloud has been drifting across the Northland. It floated as far north as Two Harbors and as far south as Carleton County. Laura Cowan joins us now to update us on the effects of these vapors. Laura?
Well, Kevin, the cloud contained benzene vapors, and these vapors were the reason for today's evacuation. Clouds of chemicals made their way across the Northland this afternoon, causing thousands of people to drop what they were doing, flee from their homes and offices, covering their eyes and noses to prevent the burning sensation of the chemicals. Those who came in close contact with the chemicals may have suffered some side effects. About 25 people were sent to the hospital today, complaining of watering eyes, sore throats, dizziness, and nausea. Highways and bridges leading in and out of the Twin Ports were shut down for the better part of the day. Benzene testing crews are now on their way from the Twin Cities to continue testing the air and water for traces of the chemicals. Right now, authorities say most of the water supplies are safe. However, some counties are using their backup supplies. The testing of the water is to determine safety and damage. We should have more information tomorrow on what ecological harm, if any, this accident will cause.
You mentioned drinking water and that it appears to be safe at this time. How about Lake Superior itself? Have they been able to stop the chemicals?
Well, right now they've put sort of like a safety net at the basin of the lake to prevent the chemicals from flowing into the water from where the spill itself happened. Right now, authorities are saying the spill's about 4 miles away from the lake, and so they're really not concerned, but they are taking extra precautions there.
All right, thank you, Laura. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency is working with the Luce EPA laboratories to study the effects of the chemical spill. Lisa Blagan spoke with chemists at the lab, and she's here to help us get a better idea of what kind of chemicals we're dealing with. Lisa?
Well, Kevin, those who have come in contact with the gas are reporting nausea, sore throats, watery eyes, and headaches. But chemists at the EPA lab have assured me that the combination of gases in our atmosphere is not a serious threat to human health.
Imagine that if a worker was down where the tanker car spilled right now without a mask, that there is a possibility that they could be severely injured. But the exposures that would cause death are quite high, and most of the citizenry would not be exposed to that level.
A number of organic chemicals were spilled in the derailment, but the one causing concern is called benzene dicyclopentadiene. It's commonly used in plastics and styrofoam, but chemists say its concentration in our air is no reason to panic.
I just read something on small animals being exposed to quite high levels at, I think it was 6,500 parts per million for like 80 hours, and there didn't appear to be any lasting effects on those animals. So it is unpleasant, and it is good to get out of the odor, but there shouldn't be any real long-term effects.
The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has sent 2 emergency teams with special equipment to Duluth's Coast Guard base. Those teams will be taking air and water samples and sending them to the Duluth lab and elsewhere to be tested. Scientists have also begun graphing and tracking the cloud, but weather and geography are working against us.
We didn't have and don't have much of a wind blowing, so it wasn't rapidly dissipated by the natural winds. And of course, situated here in Duluth, with the wind blowing from the direction it was this morning, we have the nice big hill behind us, which traps the air even more.
Now, I just put a call into the EPA lab moments ago. The latest reports are that this rain should help knock most of the chemicals out of the air. And once on the ground, scientists say the chemicals will be dissipated, diluted, and therefore virtually harmless.
All right, thank you, Lisa Blegan. Now here's the very latest on Twin Ports area evacuations. In Superior, authorities are keeping the city's evacuation order in place as a precaution. Meanwhile, the city of Duluth has lifted its evacuation based on 0 readings of benzene gas taken at points throughout the city. Ryan Davenport has spent the day covering this story. He joins us now with more. Ryan?
Kevin, for literally thousands of Twin Ports residents and residents of outlying areas, this has been a day they'll never forget. Evacuations forced these people to cancel plans and head for cleaner air. And as you're about to see, that project was carried out as well as could be expected, thanks to the efforts of law enforcement, residents, and volunteers.
Residents of South Superior is being evacuated. There's been a chemical spill. We need you to evacuate north.
That was today's early morning wake-up call from the Superior Police Department. With only scant details, residents headed for evacuation centers like Westman Arena.
I was kind of scared. I was panicked, so we just got our stuff together and left as soon as we could. We were gone within about 30 seconds, so.
My son and our foster child was sleeping in the tent last night, and they came in the house early this morning, and they said they had a terrible headache and they were throwing up. And I thought, boy, there's something isn't right.
I think it's real scary getting woke up in the middle of the night or early morning and getting everybody together.
And as word spread of a gas leak, so too did the vaporous clouds and unmistakable odor. Roadblocks were set up near the spill site, but it soon became apparent the cloud was headed across the bay to Duluth.
Hi, are you headed north?
Yeah, we're going back home to Thunder Bay.
Okay, we've got it.
That's when the Minnesota State Patrol blocked off London Road and told residents to avoid the cloud. That included Lakeshore Lutheran Home residents who were taken to Central High School.
There's very little panic. Most of our residents find this reasonably entertaining because they don't have a lot of excitement in some parts of their day. They're dealing with it very comfortably.
Residents don't need much of an incentive to leave. The blue haze and odor is a good one. Officers are following a general rule of thumb. If you're aware of these conditions, they're asking you to leave. And so the mass exodus was on. Many headed for Central High School to wait it out.
Well, I'd like to know what's happening and how long it's going, how long the thing is going to take.
As many as 1,300 residents took shelter from the mysterious odor right here, while volunteers worked to keep these folks as comfortable as possible. Now, we do have a couple of footnotes. Superior officials estimate about 2,000 people were affected by that city's evacuation today, which again is still in place. Also, I just got off the phone with Superior Assistant Fire Chief Jim Carlson, who says there are reports of lingering gas clouds in that city, especially in the Billings Park area. He says he expects the evacuation to remain in place at least until sometime later tonight. And finally, the American Red Cross has announced that hot meals will be provided to Superior residents affected by the evacuations tonight, and they are located at 218 South 27th Avenue West. Back to you, Kevin.
All right, thank you, Ryan Davenport. Well, the weather situation has no doubt played an important role in today's developments. Joining us now live outside is Pat Kelly. Pat?
Well, right now the winds are southerly at 7 miles an hour. I'm looking across the street at the Duluth Public Library. That flag is draped straight down, so there's not much wind movement. But as Lisa Blagan said in her report, the rain that we are expecting now for the next few hours in the form of showers should really help take all of it out of the sky. And we'll have more in the half hour here.
All right, thank you, Pat Kelly. Well, we're going to take a short break now and catch our breath. When we return, we'll talk with Joe Thornton live from the Duluth Evacuation Center. Don't go away. Our coverage of the chemical spill will continue.
All aboard for the ride of your life. A trip on the Kdlh TV3.
Welcome back. Upwards of 50,000 people have been evacuated throughout the Twin Ports and have headed into various evacuation centers. Joining us now live from one of the evac centers is Joe Thornton. Joe, how are things going up at Central High School?
Well, Kevin, as you said, I am right up here above Central High School, right below Central High School, above the Duluth Central Hillside area. Many local residents were brought to this location today for the evacuation, about 2,000 people in all. Now, since the announcement at 3:30 that Duluth had lifted its evacuation, there's been a steady stream of DTA buses and other vehicles that have brought people in and out of this area. So far, the move has gone exceptionally well, despite the large number of people that have been through here. As I said, about 2,000 people in all. Joining me is Duluth Police Chief Scott Lyons, who's been kind of heading up the whole operation here, Chief. How smooth has this been working for you so far today?
Well, there were some rough edges early on trying to get that many people out of the city and into some safe areas until we were sure what we had. I think now, in the last hour since we've started to remove the people from the shelters and allow them to go back home, things have been fairly orderly. We didn't have to get them out of the shelters as fast as we had to get them in there, so we're a little more orderly in bringing everything back to order here. It's just going to take some time.
Now, give me a quick feel for the situation here. Now, we've seen how smooth the evacuation has gone from this location here at Central High School. Is this the same that we're seeing around the city in terms of getting people back to their homes?
Pretty much so. Some of the other sites that are more remote than Central, it's just taking a little more time because there's not enough roads to get in and out of there. And we just have to be patient. Everybody has to. Our officers, all the volunteers, the medical people that are doing what they can, the DTA people, the ambulance companies, we're all working hard to try and make this thing as smooth as possible. It's just going to take some time.
Okay, well, thank you very much for taking some time with us, Chief. Now, the rain is just starting to fall again here just below Central High School. One of the problems that they encountered here today is there were several nursing homes that were evacuated to this area, and some of the officials here were very concerned that that would pose some real logistic problems. Now, officials here cite really good cooperation between the authorities, volunteers, and the citizens in making today's event as smooth as humanly possible. Kevin, I'm going to turn it back to you in the studio now.
Joe, I've got one question. Is it safe to say, at least on the Duluth side of the border, that the evacuation centers have served their purpose at this point?
That seems to be the feeling that we're getting here in talking to the people who ran the evac center here at Central, and also from Scott Lyons, that things worked very smooth, that it was very urgent to get them here. Things worked as well as planned, maybe even better than planned. And a lot of what's being credited today is the training and preparation that has gone into so many mock disasters that we see in the area. Then today a real disaster, and things work out.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe Thornton. Well, earlier today, Duluth Mayor Gary Doty called the city an absolute ghost town. And now that things appear to be returning to normal, he joins us in our studio live. Mayor Doty, thanks for being here. At what point did you deem it necessary that we have a full-fledged evacuation south of the, well, I guess we should say beneath the Skyway Parkway?
Well, actually, that determination wasn't mine. That determination was made by the professionals like Scott Lyons, we had just talked to, Chief Larry Bushy, Fire Chief, people in the area, the State Commissioner of Health, we were in contact with, the MPCA. They're the ones that determined that we take the steps to evacuate, or at least recommend that the community be evacuated. As you pointed out earlier in your broadcast, you saw pictures of people holding their faces and their noses and that type of thing because of the irritation it was causing. We didn't know exactly, because the feds didn't get in there and be able to examine the site of the derailment as fast as we had hoped they would. We didn't want to take any chances, so the decision was made by those people, and they're the professionals in the field, and I concur with what they did. It was difficult decision for them to make, because obviously people will oftentimes criticize when you do things like that and say, well, you should have waited. Public safety was #1, and those people acted in that way, and I'm real proud of our people in our department and the cooperation from all over the community.
I guess a follow-up question to that, Mayor Doty, at what point did you determine it was safe to allow people to return to their homes?
Well, we were in contact after Commander Fuss from the Coast Guard had been over to review the site over in the Nemadji River. He came back, and they had people out in the community testing levels of benzene, and they determined that the benzene level across the entire community had dissipated to a level of 0, which obviously is very safe to send people back. We also were told at that point that there really was no concern of those levels probably increasing again, because everything that was in the tank had leaked out that was going to, and that they were in the process of pumping the tank out, so there would be no concern in the future. What we didn't want to happen was to send people back into their homes and then have to go back again and say, oh, you have to leave again, let's go back into the shelters. So we're very cautious about removing people, and we're very cautious about sending them back home as well. Great job on cooperation between the state and the county and the feds and the DTA and the Gold Cross. Everybody was outstanding, and in particular the people responded in a fashion so orderly that it was just absolutely outstanding.
All right, Mayor Doty, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to take another break now, and then Pat Kelly is going to rejoin us with a weather update. Don't go away.
Look at these beauties. You can find them all at Link Recreational and...
Here's an update just handed to me which affects most Superior and Douglas County residents. Emergency management officials have given the all clear for most of you to return to your homes. This does not include residents living in a 5 by 6 mile area near the derailment site. That area is bordered to the north by Highway 35 and County Road C, to the south by Baumgarten Road, to the east by County Road A, and to the west by Irondale Road. 2 rail tankers still contain potentially flammable and explosive materials. And that is what's making news so far this Tuesday night. We'll be back at 10 with the latest news concerning today's chemical spill. Until then, have a good night.
Kdlh News is closed caption for the hearing impaired.
Johnson Mertz annual warehouse sale. One of a kinds. Close out on it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Riles. Michelle Lee is on special assignment. Coming up on News 6 at 6, an estimated 50,000 people have been evacuated from their homes at the head of the lakes as the result of a train derailment and gas spill. Douglas County, the site of the derailment, has been declared an emergency area by Wisconsin's governor, and the National Guard in both Minnesota and Wisconsin have been activated to assist in this emergency. We'll have details next on News 6 at 6.
You're watching KBJR, your 24-hour news channel. News 6 at 6. With Michelle Lee, Carol Hall's weather, and Mike Berkman with sports. The news starts now.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Benzene gas from a train derailment spread fear and fumes across the Northland today. At least 22 people have gone to hospitals after inhaling those fumes. The chemical benzene spilled into the Nemadji River during a train derailment along State Highway 35 just after 2:30 this morning. A Burlington Northern Railroad car plunged into the Nemadji River during the derailment, spilling the benzene. A huge white cloud hung over the area, forcing Douglas County emergency personnel to order the evacuation of all residents within 1.5 miles of each side of the river. Highways 2 and 53, as well as Highway 35, were closed to traffic because of the accident. Minutes later, residences on Superior's south and east side were evacuated. As the cloud moved closer to Lake Superior, Duluth police ordered the evacuation of Park Point because of fears the fumes had reached the area. The spill eventually forced the evacuation of thousands of people in the Twin Ports and the surrounding area. Many downtown businesses closed for the day, and employees were told to go to higher ground away from the downtown area. Most of the main streets were soon clogged with bumper-to-bumper traffic. National Guard units in both Duluth and Superior were mobilized to help in connection with these spills. The units assisted in the evacuation of nursing homes and hospitals and were on hand to provide security if needed. Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson declared a state of emergency in Douglas County as a result of the spill, and Minnesota Governor Arne Carlson also canceled his conferences around the state and is currently in Duluth. Those evacuated are now returning to their homes. Duluth City Administrator Carl Nolenberger lifted the evacuation process in Duluth at 3:30 this afternoon for all of northeastern Minnesota. Michelle Lee is standing by live at the Miller Hill Mall with a report on the exodus from areas over the hill and back to the downtown area. Michelle.
Thank you, Barbara. As you can see, the exodus back to the city of Duluth is continuing at this hour. That is the DTA, the Guard, and volunteers transport people back to their homes this evening. Now, an estimated 40, possibly as high as 80,000 people were evacuated from the Duluth area earlier today with that benzene spill. People who had left their homes, many voluntarily, to escape that the threatening cloud of benzene that hung over the Twin Ports area. As I've said, traffic has been moving orderly tonight with few reports of problems. Now, just 10 minutes ago, an interesting thing happened here behind us. The county prisoners were being escorted in a city bus back to the city jail in downtown Duluth. They had an escort before and after them. Very impressive indeed. An important note for people to know tonight is that they're still being urged not to call the 911 comm center in St. Louis County unless extreme emergency. They want to keep those lines open in the event of medical or other calls for help. Now, earlier at the comm center, where there was a news conference, state officials, city and county officials declared the all clear, as you said, at 3:30 this afternoon for Duluth and parts of Carlton County, which were evacuated. That following 0 levels of reading for the benzene gas. Officials on all levels of government applauded the Northland's effort, both community members and emergency personnel, for their handling of this challenge of this disaster. Again, people are now returning to the city of Duluth. Traffic is moving smoothly with no apparent problems or accidents that we can see. Reporting live near the Miller Hill Mall, I'm Michelle Lee, News 6.
Michelle, you were at the comm center and were returning. You stopped at the Miller Hill Mall. Was there a particular reason for that? Were you able to move freely, or was traffic back to back, or just exactly what stopped you at that point?
No, traffic is moving quite smoothly. We did want to position our cameras so people could see that the traffic has changed dramatically since earlier today. It is moving smoothly with no apparent problems to the downtown Duluth area. Back to you, Barbara.
Thanks, Michelle. The actual effects of what this spill could do to the environment here in the Northland are really still unknown. Officials from the Environmental Protection Agency as well as the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency have all been working in tandem to keep this damage to a minimum. Joining us now are Chuck Williams, Director of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and Deputy Commissioner Cindy Jepson to tell us what kind of effect this spill will have on the Northland. And before we get into that, the reason you're here is because the MPCA, it is rare to get the both of you together, the MPCA was going to have a special meeting in Duluth today, and you were all here. Chuck?
Yes, I had my whole executive staff here and much of my technical staff because at 1 o'clock this afternoon we were scheduled to have our board act on the rules for aquaculture and act on the 3 permits for potlatch.
That, of course, has been postponed now until...
Yes, I believe
Monday, Cindy?
The meeting will be Monday. We anticipate that it will be held at 1 p.m. in the afternoon at the deck, but people should stay tuned to find out for sure.
Now, Chuck, you have first-hand knowledge of the evacuation because you were evacuated twice. Tell us about that.
Well, the first time was off of Park Point, and I guess it's just one of those times again where I'm proud to say I'm from northern Minnesota, and we reacted the way we do up here in crisis. Everyone was calm. I was really impressed with the traffic. Both times I was asked to leave where I was stationed, and it just amazed me because there was no anxiety. I drove normally. People were one at a time at stoplights and stop signs the way they normally do, and it was just great. And what I remember about us Northerners in times of crisis.
Cindy, can you give us some understanding of just exactly what is benzene and what it's used for?
Sure, Barbara. Benzene is an organic compound. It's highly volatile, It's a substance that disperses with air, and air quality is what we've been primarily concerned about here in Minnesota, and our staff will continue to monitor. Benzene is used for a number of different things. It's used in the manufacturing of rubber. It's also used in the formulation of gasoline, and it's a solvent. And so the kind of odor that you get from paint is, or cleaning of paint materials is what you would smell with benzene.
The actual spill area is, of course, out of your jurisdiction because it's in Minnesota, but you are monitoring the air. How do we know when the air level of toxicity in the air is all right for us to send the people home again?
Well, we have scientific monitoring equipment, and as a matter of fact, one of our top folks came up several hours ago from St. Paul, just about the time they were lifting the ban, and was monitoring the air as he drove up, and he read zero detect, on this side of the river. Now, we understand at this time there are some areas over in Superior where there's still some concern, and I would advise people to stay tuned. The news media has been outstanding in their providing information to the public, so I would urge that we maintain that link, and we appreciate that.
Cindy, what will the MPCA's continuing role in this be?
Well, we will continue to monitor to make sure that those levels stay at non-detect, or at least so that there will be no threat or concern to public health. And following this, we will do a debriefing. We will look at the way our emergency response operated. We will also sit down with the local units of government and compare notes. We want to see where we may be able to improve if in the unforeseen occasion this would ever happen again.
Because you were on the scene, Chuck, from the very beginning, you might be able to, at this point, even assess how the response went and how the response teams put together. What's your feeling on that at this point?
Well, I think overall, our role is always secondary to the local units of government, and generally, I have to give it really high marks. There are some ways that we think we can improve the, just response, communications, and we've already contacted city and county folks, and we want to get together to do a critique and figure out how we can make it better in the event. And I hope we don't go through it again, but we have to be prepared.
So that's something that will be coming up fairly soon then, shortly after everything's cleaned up?
Well, it's ongoing already. Our staff is already making notes, and we work very, very hard to improve it because, people's lives are at stake and their health is at stake, and that's a very serious charge that we have as public officials.
All right, Cindy and Chuck, thank you very much for coming in today.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Barbara. Well, not only local, but state government as well have all turned out today to keep this disaster to a minimum. Governors from both Minnesota and Wisconsin arrived in the Twin Ports earlier this afternoon to work with local officials in their efforts to keep the benzene spill contained. At a news conference earlier today, Governor Arne Carlson of Minnesota commended the efforts of emergency personnel, trained and untrained, as they work to keep this catastrophe under control.
Local response. I think Minnesota is at its very best when a crisis occurs. It has that great capacity to pull together and, frankly, to be smart. And this was executed in a very, very smart fashion.
Governor Tommy Thompson of Wisconsin arrived in Superior a little more than an hour ago. He has declared a state of emergency for Douglas County. That will include special funds and Army National Guard units working to make sure the city stays safe as officials work to clean up the benzene spill. Both governors say they'll now be concentrating their efforts on returning the area to a state of normalcy. Thousands of residents were in fact displaced from their homes today, but with help from a team of highly trained experts, the mass exodus went off without a hitch. Amy Rutledge spent the day with some displaced workers and homeowners from Duluth who, despite the pandemonium, found a silver lining to this benzene cloud.
The benzene fumes first drifted across the harbor around 8 this morning, and Park Point residents were quick to hightail it across the bridge. Police went door to door alerting people of the danger. Neighbors helped out as well.
Yeah, well, we've called our neighbors, the elderly folks, and my husband's called the Point, Park Point Manor, because we have elderly folks there. And, we're just looking out for one another.
By 10 a.m., the wind had shifted, and the smell of benzene spread to the eastern part of town.
You could smell a little bit. I was starting to get a headache in there, and that's when everybody knew we had to get out of here.
At Lakeshore Lutheran Nursing Home, the scene was hectic. City buses were called in to assist with the evacuation of more than 200 residents, many of them in wheelchairs. But despite the disruption, people still found something to smile about.
Really, this is kind of exciting. If you live in a nursing home, life isn't too exciting sometimes, so this is kind of a new and unusual event. And of course, our staff is working very closely with that.
Not knowing how long they'd be gone, employees also brought food with them to a nearby shelter. At Central High School, residents arrived by the busload and carloads, and many of them understandably shaken and scared.
I started noticing about 7 o'clock, and my husband couldn't believe me. He thought I was kidding, and finally we heard it over the radio, and we grabbed the dog and went.
Have you notified their parents that they are here? Okay. Red Cross volunteers followed their disaster plan and provided residents with a place to stay, something to eat, and a shoulder to lean on. In Duluth, Amy Rutledge, News 6.
For the past 2 hours, city buses have been up and running, returning residents to their homes in Duluth. DTA officials say they expect the process to take quite a while tonight, but by later this evening, all Duluth residents should be returned to their homes. The Salvation Army is offering food and shelter to any Superior residents who have not been allowed to return to their homes. Anyone in need should go to the Salvation Army Center on 27th Avenue in Duluth. Still ahead on News 6 at 6, Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson declared a state of emergency in Douglas County. We'll have a live report on that from Superior, and we'll look at the health risks involved with benzene. From Ely to Drummond, this is News 6 at KBJR.
What's the best thing about American Family Outlet?
The last finishing detail at one low price. For a free estimate, call today.
Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson declared a state of emergency in Superior and Douglas County as a result of the train derailment. The governor flew to Superior to get the results of that spill firsthand. Dave Jench is standing by in Superior with a breaking new development. David, what's going on?
Well, Barbara, as you can see behind me, the news conference is beginning that we had talked about at 5 o'clock, that news conference as to whether or not people in Superior can go back to their homes, those who've been evacuated. And we can, I can brief you on the on what happened at the earlier news conference in a moment, but I think we should talk about this new development. And I've got Public Works Director Jeff Wdio here, who has agreed to step out of the news conference, which is just beginning, and fill us in. Jeff, what's the word? Can people begin going home?
Yes, they can. We just got through meeting with all of the officials involved in this, and we're going to allow the people to go back home, with the exception that the elderly, anybody who has breathing problems should take extra careful precautions at this point in time. But we are going to open the city back up and let people go back to their residence.
What about the security zone, the area around the spill? What is the status there?
The security zone is going to be closed for the evening. There's a curfew on it that I believe goes into effect at 9 p.m. and we will not let anybody in the area. It's approximately an area 5 miles by 6 miles from the center of the spill.
And again, why the delay between they allowed people back in Duluth an hour or so ago? Why the delay for the people south of Superior?
Well, we were still getting reports of odors and the sight of fumes within the air. So to be absolutely sure that there was no danger for the public, we wanted to get out and do some more air monitoring, and the results of that air monitoring indicate that it's safe for everyone to go back.
All right, Public Works Director Jeff Wdio, thank you. One quick piece of information, Barbara, again repeating, people in Superior, other than in the area immediately around the spill, can begin returning to their homes. Quick note from the news conference earlier with the governor, Burlington Northern will be liable for cleanup costs. The booms at this point are keeping the toxic spill or the chemical out of Lake Superior. Live at Superior City Hall, I'm Dave Jench. Back to you, Barbara.
Thank you, David. With today's evacuation also comes concern by a lot of folks about benzene and its long-term health effects by being exposed to the chemical. Many people in the area were obviously in a near state of panic upon hearing about the evacuation plans, as evidenced by calls and visits to local emergency rooms. Local health officials say unless you have been exposed to the chemical over a long period of time, you are under no immediate health risk but may feel some discomfort.
It can be fairly minimal. It depends on the person's underlying health status. If you could think of it such as being exposed to smoke in a campfire, that's irritating to everybody. So breathing this substance is also irritating to everybody, and people tolerate it at different levels.
Most of the symptoms of benzene exposure are very mild, and doctors say they should go away very quickly once you get fresh air or wash off your skin. We have just a quick reminder now. Both the Bong and Blatnick bridges will remain closed to Superior until the Superior Command Post lifts the evacuation order entirely. Officials say that could happen at the earliest in about 2 hours. We will keep you posted on that. Carol Hall is next with our weather. I understand that there is a slight possibility of some thunder showers out there. Stay with us.
Finding that out-of-the-way fishing hole is easy.
Through the evening, as there are developments regarding evacuation and cleanup, we will have the latest information and keep you posted. Thanks for joining us for News 6 at 6. Stay with us for all the latest developments tonight on News 6 Nightside.
Men's wardrobe provided by Reinhold's, Miller Hill Mall, main entrance.
Chicago is my kind of town.
Chicago. Due to today's emergency situation,
you'll be hooked.
WDIO-TV Duluth, WIRT Hibbing.
Stand by to roll.
Live from the news leader of the North. This is Eyewitness News at 6 with Dennis Anderson, Ray Higgins on sports, and Ken Cheapin's weather.
Good evening, everyone. This has been quite the day in the Twin Ports in Duluth, Superior, Douglas, and Carleton counties, one that local folks aren't going to forget for some time to come. Thousands of local people were evacuated during the day following a toxic chemical spill that occurred when a rail tanker car fell from a trestle in a train derailment south of Superior. The car fell into the Nemadji River, spilling the benzene into the water, which in turn came to the surface of that water and turned into a gas and spread out. Now, this is what the situation looked like this morning as the gas began to flow freely around the Nemadji, then moved across the bay into Duluth. Evacuations began in Superior and Douglas County fairly early on, but it wasn't until the wind brought the cloud to Duluth that emitted from this tank car lying there in the Nemadji River. The Park Point then became affected over here, and the point was evacuated. Then, after the Park Point area was evacuated, the city was told to get out everything below Skyline Drive, and that means nursing homes, private homes, businesses, the like. In Superior, the evacuation order remains in effect at this hour, but in Duluth and in Carleton County, folks began returning to their homes about 3:40 this afternoon. Now, as the situation begins to improve here, we do find more and more people heading to their houses. A reminder, the Blotnick and Bong bridges are still closed going into Superior. Our Mike Ford has been following the situation from Superior. He joins us now live. Mike, what's the situation over there at this moment?
Denny, we just got word now that the evacuation order has been lifted in Superior as of 6 o'clock. So 2 hours after Duluth got the all clear, now it comes to Superior, and this crisis is winding down as far as the people of Superior are concerned now, too. They now, too, can go to back to their homes. And right now, let's talk to Greg Gennard, and he's with the Douglas County Sheriff's Department, of course, and get some kind of wrap-up, some kind of summary of what's been going on here. Basically, what's the situation right now?
Well, we're in the process of putting our sweep teams together that are going to be in the control security zone and safety zone that we had talked and discussed earlier at the press conference. There'll be a combination of our sheriff's deputies and National Guard people that are going to go through that area, make sure the area is swept clean, and then we're going to set up security checkpoints so that nobody can go back in there. We're doing some testing out there now. We want to make sure that we don't have any hot spots that were reported in the city. Once that's taken place, then we will open the county back up for people to return to their homes, except in the area that we have classified as the security zone.
Okay. How many people live in the area that you will have closed off still?
I'm not sure at this point. I know that there's groupings of people in there. There's some separate housing on 2 areas of the security zone, but we're going to go in. We hope that most of those people, or all of them, are out of there, but there may be some people that decided that they wanted to stay initially.
Is there any way to sum up at this hour how much damage has been done, or how many people have been injured, or any kind of figure like that for us?
I guess if we want to knock on wood, I can say that this operation has been an excellent job in coordination between all of the agencies involved. We've had good cooperation from the citizens of Douglas County and the city of Superior. We have not had any reports of injury, although we did understand that there was 6 or less people that did walk into the hospital themselves. So we're very thankful for that. We want to continue to work on the side of public safety. That's where we're going to go back in and recheck those areas. But we're very pleased in the direction that this matter is taken at this point.
All right, Greg Gennard, thanks for joining us here. And Denny, right now we'll get ready to throw it back to you. The calm is returning to Superior really already. There never was any panic here today or anything really like that. The streets got very quiet as people did leave town or go back to their homes and just stay inside. But the calm has returned here, and as we said, that order for the evacuation has been lifted as of 6 o'clock, Denny.
All right, that certainly is good news indeed. So all folks in the Superior area can go back to their homes, with the exception of those who might live in that footprint, that pattern around the Nemadji River where the spill took place?
That's right, and that's roughly about a mile and a half on each direction of that, a square area around that. But
any idea, Mike, are they going to plug that hole in that train car tonight yet?
That sounds like something that still might take quite a while as they pump out what's in there and go about the process of checking the other cars, and it's very strongly believed there is no leak in the other cars. But it is not a matter of hours. We're probably talking well into the night before they seal off that car and really completely solve that problem.
All right, Mike Ford, thank you, live from Superior. Now we want to give you some sense of how the gas moved throughout the Twin Ports area and why it sent so many thousands of people scrambling today. It all started with the train derailment about 5 miles south of Superior, where the tracks crossed the Nemadji River just west of Highway 35. The cloud then followed the path of the river and made its way toward Lake Superior and in the directions you see those arrows. Once it hit the open water, it moved across to Park Point, then across the lake. It headed toward Duluth. Once it hit the shores of Duluth, that blue cloud and haze headed both directions up and down the shore. Each shift in this direction sent more people toward evacuation centers and higher ground. So that's where the cloud cover came from. Now, Duluth and Superior's water supplies do not seem to be in any danger at this time. We are told here this afternoon that health department officials say the location of the water intake valves at the bottom of the lake make it unlikely that any benzene will make it into our city drinking water supply. And even if it does, it will not have much of an effect.
Environmental stuff. In order to really have a health effect from drinking this water, you know, at the kind of low levels that could possibly occur, you'd have to drink this stuff for a lifetime. You'd have to be exposed to a lot of it.
Health department officials say they will test water quality tomorrow just as a precautionary measure. The drama of today's events unfolded in the pre-dawn hours while most of us slept. A 57-car train moved along Burlington Northern tracks outside of Superior. Pamela Fish tells us what happened from there.
It was just before 3 a.m. when 14 cars from a Burlington Northern train derailed at the overpass above the Nemadji River. One car tumbled into the waterway, spilling its toxic contents. By daybreak, Superior and Douglas County officials were at work evacuating the area. The chemical in the tank car, an aromatic concentrate containing a high percentage of benzene, met the vapor in the air, creating a giant cloud. In just a few short hours, the cloud was spreading fumes and health concerns over an even wider area, and more people were sent from their homes.
Residents of South Superior is being asked to be evacuated.
It wasn't long before authorities blocked all the main arteries leading into the city, in effect placing a quarantine on Superior. Some 20,000 gallons of the toxic chemical spilled. Officials from Burlington Northern Railroads still say they do not know what caused the train derailment. The spill flowed into Lake Superior and the gas cloud made its way across the bay. Soon, Duluth residents were being evacuated as well, and the race to get out of town and find safety was underway. I'm Pamela Fish for Eyewitness News.
By 8 a.m., Duluth began its evacuation ordeal. Buses and all available transportation were called out to take people off of Park Point, including residents of 2 nursing homes. As the plume moved east with the wind, the Lakeside neighborhood was next.
We're evacuating Lower Lakeside, at least up to Glenwood for now, and preferably over the hill.
Police say residents were orderly and calm as they packed their bags and headed over the hill.
We started getting kind of ready, but we were really taking our time. And by the time we left, it was about
quarter to 10.
Quarter to 10, but we really took our time. But by the time we got out of the house, it was
We shut all the windows, so we couldn't smell anything, but when we came outside, it was
bad.
Very bad.
Then the wind shifted and pushed the cloud over downtown. Businesses and hotels closed up shop, and all non-essential personnel at City Hall were sent home. In all, thousands of people were asked to evacuate, and downtown was a ghost town.
It's really dead, seeing no one here or whatever, and waiting patiently to get out of here to go up in the hill.
Eventually, all of Duluth, south of Skyline Drive, was asked to evacuate, including West Duluth and Fond du Lac. Traffic flowing up Mesaba Avenue was bumper to bumper for more than an hour as people followed those instructions. At 3:30, the flow was reversed.
He's on his way. He'll be here in about 5 minutes.
In Duluth, Karen Sunderman, Eyewitness News.
The crews that responded to today's emergency got a helping hand from Mother Nature. The weather helped diffuse the benzene that leaked from that rail car. And now with a look at the weather ahead of us, here's our own Ken Chapin. Ken, quite a day. Thanks for the weather, too.
Well, the weather's going to get better. In fact, the weather tonight should really clear things up because we'll have a wind shift to the northeast late tonight. And that will get rid of that air inversion that's been down at the harbor all day today. And it'll be a strong enough wind up to 15 miles an hour to blow that gas out of here. So late tonight should clear up the situation. 64 at the harbor, the airport at 58, and Superior at 66. First weather brought to you by your Convenience Plus ICO stores. And our forecast is some showers late, and again, those very nice winds coming later tonight. We'll talk about that later in this half hour.
All right, Ken, people certainly are leaving the evac centers. We'll have more on that when we come back.
The class of '92 is at your Toyota. Big money at Menards.
People in Duluth are returning to their homes now, as well as in the city of Superior with the lifting of the evacuation order at 6 o'clock tonight. Nowhere are they more relieved than at Central High School in Duluth, one of the stations people were evacuated to early today. People started leaving the school a couple of hours ago, but as Bonnie Kdlh is about to explain, packing up and heading for home is no easy process for some of the people who are there. Bonnie, it was a big move to get there. It'll be a big move to get back home again.
Certainly is. Say, Dennis, at one point today, there were up to 1,700 to 2,000 people here at Central High School, local residents plus local nursing homes, and that's what made the trip up here so difficult. Was some of the nursing home residents that were in wheelchairs, bedridden, and so forth. They had to be all transferred up here. And in just a moment, I'm going to talk to Amy Weidman with the American Red Cross. But first of all, let's roll a little tape on what happened here earlier today. Saw all kinds of people helping out and pitching in when people were evacuated here to Central High School, and as we mentioned, that was about 1,700 to 1,300 people, and they were really actually preparing to stay overnight. So you can imagine a lot of happy people when about 4 o'clock this afternoon they were told that they could go home. Now that's where Amy comes in, and Amy, at 4 o'clock this afternoon people were told they could go on home. What was your reaction here?
People were extremely excited. They were happy to, number one, not have to stay overnight in a facility that they were, unfamiliar with. They were separated from their family, and so people were very happy that the disaster was over.
Any kind of medical problems that you confronted or faced up here?
No, it's surprising that with the number of people that we had that had medical conditions that we didn't have more. We did have one person that collapsed and was brought to the hospital, but other than that, nothing.
Okay. Now you have the 477th Medical Company here. What was their role today?
The 477th has played a key role in transporting people from Duluth to Superior, military escort, and any other type of transportation that needed to go across into the Wisconsin area. They also gave us many supplies such as bedding. We were preparing for people staying overnight, and so the Salvation Army and the Armory was also giving us things.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Say, Dennis, again, there are still some people here from the Park Point Manor that still have to be taken home, so this will go on yet another couple hours here.
Apparently there, Bonnie, then throughout the day as all of this was taking place, we had no real serious problems. And when you consider 1,000 people or better, 1,300 people have been moved up there, that's really phenomenal. People do their jobs.
All right. Things went very smoothly.
Okay, Bonnie, thank you very kindly. Live from Central High School, which was one of the evac points here today. Now, a lot of people took this plenty seriously when they were told to evacuate. Some didn't stop when they reached the outskirts of Duluth either. Many headed clear on up to the Iron Range, where officials were preparing overnight accommodations. People we talked to on the range were reporting a heavy influx of people who wanted to get as far away as possible when they got wind of a chemical spill in Duluth and Superior. Joining us next in our coverage of the toxic chemical spill, we have UMD Professor of Chemistry, Professor Robert Carlson. Professor Carlson, can you tell us first of all a little bit about what benzene is and maybe what it isn't?
Well, Dennis, benzene is a major product of the refining of petroleum and represents a primary feedstock or starting material for a host of other organic chemicals.
Now, is it normally transported in rail cars, and is it usually mixed with other chemicals as it was in this case today?
Well, you can, typically it is transported this way, and this is not unusual at all. And the mixtures and the composition of the rail car it wasn't unusual.
Let me ask you, exactly how dangerous was the situation today? We have this benzene gas escaping, is forming sort of a blue haze around here. Is this a dangerous situation?
Well, I think our officials reacted appropriately. There's both acute and long-term effects of benzene. The acute effects we were talking about today, dizziness, some headaches, problems such as this sort. Long-term acute effects are ones that we shouldn't have to worry about here. Those are ones that workers encounter as they use benzene as a solvent. So this indeed was, this is serious, but was handled very appropriately, I think.
That's very good to hear. I know both here in Duluth and over in Superior, they have had, Bob, for many years now, emergency drills preparing for just something like this, hoping it would never come, but it did today, and it sounds like they were prepared. Thank you very kindly. Appreciate it. Professor Bob Carlson, UMD chemistry professor. Now, we're going to be back with more right after this message. Stay with us, please.
Today I had one blind date and a garden club.
SOS sale today.
Many people today are concerned about any long-term effects of the chemical benzene on their health, and that's why we have called in a physician from the Duluth Clinic, Dr. Peter Franklin, to answer some questions for us. Dr. Franklin, first of all, thank you. I'm sure you've been quite busy on this day. I guess one of the questions people would have is, so many of us could smell this benzene today. Is there going to be any effect on us if we just, the odor was in the air, but we didn't get that close?
There might be some short-term effects that come with acute exposure. These would be nose or throat irritation, headaches, dizziness, perhaps a sense of giddiness, or very likely maybe some eye irritation as well.
Now, somebody who is watching and may have some of those symptoms, should they notify a physician? Should they go to a doctor? Or is this going to be a passing thing with them?
Generally, it's a very passing thing, and what they would suggest in the emergency room when many people have come in today is just get out of it and get into some fresh air, and within 20-30 minutes most of these symptoms pass.
Okay, so really, unless you were right down where that tank car was, we should not have experienced any real severe inhalation of this gas.
That's correct. At St. Mary's, when I was down there this afternoon, there was only one patient that came in with some moderate symptoms. All the others were quite light.
Now, in a worst-case scenario, we know benzene is considered to be a human carcinogen linked to leukemia. Are we exposed to that at all, or is it just too thin a gas up here for us?
Well, there again, when you're talking about the long-term effects, you're talking about long-term exposure, such as the people who manufacture this or people who transport it, and that sort of thing. But the exposure we had today, that'd be very unlikely.
Now, we saw a lot of people being transported, elderly people being transported from nursing homes to evac centers in town. It shouldn't have posed any real problem. Maybe some of the trauma, though, just the unfamiliarity of where they were, some confusion.
For the older folks, that's very true.
It could be a little tougher for them. Working in the emergency room today, you did see some folks come in then, but nothing real serious.
Right.
One moderate case. All right, sir. Thank you very kindly, Dr. Peter Franklin.
You're welcome.
That's our news portion of this half hour. Our latest sports news with Ray Higgins is coming up. That'll be followed by that all-important weather forecast from Ken Chapin. Stay with us. A lot more to come.
On Friday, the 4th of July, Saturday and Sunday.
That looks nice.
68 and dry and sunny.
Oh, does that look nice indeed.
The weekend looks good.
Okay, sounds great. Now, we should recap tonight's headline story. At 6 o'clock tonight, the city of Superior lifted its evacuation order, and residents are now allowed in Superior to go back to their homes. The Duluth evac order was lifted about 2.5 hours earlier. Those who live closer to the chemical spill will not be allowed to go back to their homes yet, but we will keep you posted. Now, we're going to be back tonight at 10 o'clock with a complete update on what's happened today. That'll be followed by a 30-minute Eyewitness News special report on the chemical spill at 10:30 this evening. So there's a lot more to come here on Eyewitness News. That is our news, sports, and weather at this hour. Back at 10. Good night, everybody, and be kind.
There is only one place you'll get the
everything. Only on Arsenio, Tuesday.
Tonight at 12:05 on Kdlh TV3.
People you can count on, Kdlh TV.
Live from the broadcast center, this is the 10 o'clock Kdlh News with the entire Kdlh News team.
Good
evening. Thanks for joining us. Tens of thousands of Twin Ports residents are back home tonight after being evacuated from their neighborhoods early this morning. At this hour, only a 30-mile area remains blocked off by authorities just south of Superior. Much of today's chemical spill coverage has focused on one leaking train car, but tonight officials are keeping an eye on 2 other train cars in the same wreck that could spell disaster. Much work to be done at the site where 14 Burlington Northern train cars left the tracks south of Superior this morning. Immediate concern has shifted tonight from the tanker car, which contained benzene, to 2 other cars. Late this afternoon, Douglas County authorities outlined a 5 by 6 mile area which will remain closed tonight, while authorities monitor the status of 2 tankers which contain flammable and potentially explosive material.
This security zone is established for protection for fire and/or explosion. In case that would happen, we're going to do everything to make sure that when those tanks are pumped off, that the technical people are on scene, and we don't believe we'll have any problem at all, but we do want to make sure that we again err on the side of public safety. And
the affected area is bordered on the north by Highway 35 and County Road C, to the south by Baumgarten Road and Highway 35, to the east by County Road A, and on the west by Irondale Road. Officials are confident that none of the chemicals will reach Lake Superior, thanks in a large part to a series of booms across the mouth of the Nemadji River.
We did notice that the dams that were put in the water, the first dam was doing some good, although the water level has gone up and it's gone over the south part of that dam. There are 2 others, though, and the second one appears to be holding back the liquid material. We've talked about adding some additional dams, perhaps a couple more, just to be a fail-safe measure to keep the liquid from getting into the lake.
Burlington Northern officials say about 40,000 gallons of benzene leaked from this car and formed the vapor cloud, which threatened much of the Northland for most of the day. Once the cars containing the 40,000 gallons of liquid petroleum and butadiene are secured, an investigation into the cause of the derailment can begin.
We haven't had a lot of access to the site for a lot of obvious reasons, and so we haven't really gotten into the specific cause. There's a pretty good pileup of cars out there in addition to these, so we haven't really been able to get into that part of the accident investigation yet.
Now, just moments ago, Superior Mayor Herb Bergson told Kdlh News there has been a substantial fish kill on the Nemadji River, and we'll have more on that tomorrow. With Superior's evacuation now lifted, most residents are back home again. That is, except for about 40 families who reside closest to the spill site. They have been taken in by friends and relatives for the night, but as Ryan Davenport tells us, a dose of volunteerism could be the cure for homesickness.
It's been a long day for volunteers at Rothwell Student Center, and now more than 12 hours after it started, it's coming to an end. For student Mike Anderson, going home won't be an option because he lives close to the spill site.
I want to get home, yeah. I'm anxious. I left the cat back home, and I'm concerned about the cat.
Mike and his friends managed to keep busy helping others who were forced to leave their homes when police roused them from sleep early this morning.
When something like this happens, it's really difficult to just sit back and let things just happen around you. I wanted to be a part of it. I guess I had too much energy going on inside of me to not do something.
At first, I was a little bit reluctant. I didn't know, if I belonged there or if I should do anything. And then before I knew it, I was on the job.
It was a job that would last all day. In Duluth, volunteers were just as important at Central High School.
When there are problems, I just love helping out. It's great the way a community can come together when there's a disaster like this and help people out in need.
It would be remembered as the day the Twin Ports up and left for a time, but it's nice to be back. So for now, this 30-square-mile area surrounding the spill site is no man's land. And officials say that status may not change for days. Near the Nemadji River, Ryan Davenport, Kdlh News.
Across the border, Duluth's Environmental Protection Agency is assisting with research to determine the concentration of chemicals released in the leak. Right now, most of the work involves testing air quality. Some water samples have been taken from the Nemadji River, but scientists say because of the benzene-based chemicals turn rapidly into a liquid from a gas, there's very little danger to the water supply.
As highly volatile as this chemical is, it is not going to stay around in the water very long. So whatever did get in the Nemadji River may affect some of the aquatic life in the Nemadji River, but the chances that it's going to be carried much further than that are extremely slim and local.
Chemists also say the rain has washed most of the chemical gases out of the air and rendered them virtually harmless. Well, one chemical we've all become more familiar with today is benzene. It made up about 40% of the compound that was spilled. Benzene is a solvent that was once common in household cleaners until it was found to cause cancer. But that was mostly in workers with frequent high-level exposure. It also causes skin irritation, dizziness, and fainting. Well, if you were chased out of town by the vapor cloud and are concerned about its effect on your health, we do have a doctor in the house. Joining us to discuss the short and long-term health risk is Dr. Ferris Keeling. Doctor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Kevin.
What kind of long-term effects, if any, can people expect to experience from this chemical spill?
Well, probably none. I've been in touch with a national expert on this, on all of the chemicals involved in this spill, pretty much since I came on duty this morning at St. Mary's Emergency Room. And there really aren't expected to be any long-term effects. The effects are greatest at the beginning, and anyone who doesn't have any symptoms now is not likely to experience anything from now on. And that includes cancer, and that includes effects on unborn babies.
Dr. Keeling, we've had quite a few questions on people that have current health conditions that this may put them at greater risk. Can we also rule that out?
Well, earlier today we were concerned about that, people with chronic lung disease or heart disease or that sort of thing. But that didn't turn out to be a problem. All of the area emergency rooms saw from 15 to 25 patients. Only one of those was admitted just for observation, and even people with chronic diseases were not seriously affected. And there aren't likely to be any serious effects from now on.
So it's safe to say at this point that if someone didn't suffer any symptoms today, they're home free?
That's true.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, doctor.
Thank you.
Well, Twin Ports Hospital saw surprisingly few patients suffering from exposure to the chemicals, and tonight's complaints have all but subsided. This was the scene at St. Mary's Medical Center a couple of hours ago. Throughout the day, the hospital treated about 30 patients. 15 of those had confirmed cases from direct exposure. The rest were patients with other medical conditions which might have been exasperated chemicals in the air. But medical personnel say they are treating all cases of nausea, headaches, and sore throats seriously.
I don't think that any of it is psychological, per se. This is a real thing, and we treat it as such.
The medical staff says the best treatment for symptoms is just to get some fresh air. Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson wasted little time in declaring Douglas County a disaster area today. Thompson even made a late afternoon flyover to survey the area firsthand.
We've activated up to 100 members of the National Guard. We have also got a helicopter up here to be used by the Coast Guard and the National Guard, as well as the DNR, to make sure that anything is needed, we'll be able to do it.
Thompson praised Douglas County emergency response teams and citizens for their handling of the day's events. Similar praise is being handed out tonight by Minnesota Governor Arne Carlson. The governor arrived in Duluth late this afternoon and was briefed by emergency officials. Carlson says he'll wait until the situation is fully evaluated in terms of environmental and health threats to determine what state assistance to offer. He also insisted to local leaders that Minnesota and Wisconsin both have vested interests in finding out what caused the accident.
We just at this point do not know enough to answer the question yes or no relative to whether or not we will ask for federal assistance. I think it's a given that the state of Wisconsin will, because that car still sits in the river.
Carlson was already coming to the Northland today to address health issues. Other area lawmakers are teaming up to secure aid for the areas affected by the spill. Tonight, Wisconsin Congressman Dave Obey and Minnesota Congressman James Oberstar said they will be working together in Washington to assist with federal help. In a statement released today, both of the lawmakers committed themselves to securing federal aid if it's needed. And we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more stories, including new layoffs at Northwest Airlines. Stay with us.
KDLH News is brought to you by
local Northland Ford dealer.
Welcome back. Today's situation required extreme cooperation between the law enforcement community, local residents, and even the military. Minnesota Governor Arne Carlson activated the National Guard for standby operations, while the U.S. military offered the assistance of the 477th Medical Company. Joe Thornton joins us live from Canal Park. Joe, what kind of effort did all of this play out in this whole ordeal today?
Well, Kevin, I'm standing right across the canal from Park Point, where the 477th is stationed. Now, it seems to boil down to a matter of a lot of prior training that has really helped everyone get through today in literally one piece. Now, the 477th will be off alert status within the next 2 hours, but today has been an extremely active one for members of this medical company. Following orders from military leaders today, more than 50 members of the 477th were geared up to assist in coordinating the evacuation of parts of Duluth and Superior. Training from their stint in the Persian Gulf War even came into play. As you may recall, the unit members are quite well versed in chemical and gas threats. Officials with the unit even credit the community with acting appropriately given the severity of the situation, and they would like to thank the Twin Ports as well for standing by the 477th during its recent difficult times.
Certainly they haven't forgotten the November.
Kind of on standby, waiting in case something.
The motivation and the period of 7 months that we served through the mobilized stage for Desert Storm put a bit of spirit into people, and also truthfully, and I heard a lot of comment today about paying back the communities of both Duluth and Superior, and that was our way of doing it. It was really a spirit today.
Quite literally, thousands of people were evacuated to safe locations today. Getting those people home to Duluth, to their homes in Duluth, also went very smoothly this evening. The Duluth Transit Authority, with assistance from Gold Cross Ambulance and Twin Ports convalescent vehicles, got most of the people home within a few hours after the evacuation was lifted at 3:30 this afternoon. Kevin?
Joe, you've talked a lot about the evacuation and everyone it took to make sure this happened well. Has there been any feedback that perhaps the whole situation was overblown at this point?
Well, I talked to Duluth Police Chief Scott Lyons about that very issue, and a response to that, absolutely not. Given the unknown nature of the situation, a cloud of potentially toxic fumes moving through the area, you simply can't be too cautious. It boiled down to a matter of better safe than sorry, but in a situation like this where there truly wasn't a threat to the people of our area, it's the way it had to be done today.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe Thornton, live from Canal Park. And we'll be right back with more KDLH News right after this.
The trainers of all major pro sports recommend one pain relief. Always
again through Thursday.
All right. Thank you, Pat. That is what's making news this Tuesday night. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow at 6 and 10. Good night.
KDLH News is closed caption for the hearing impaired.
Thursday, July 16th on News 6 Nightside. Entry forms available wherever Pabst beer is sold. Must be 21 to enter. Limit 5 entries per person.
A 30-square-mile radius surrounding the Nemadji spill becomes a security zone. We'll take you there. Cleanup workers prepare to use the latest techniques to clean up the spill. We'll explain that. And will the booms hold? We'll have a report. These stories and much more next on News 6 Nightside.
You're watching KBJR, your 24-hour news channel. News 6 Nightside with Michelle Lee, Carol Hall's weather, and Tom Hansen with sports. The news starts now.
A toxic cloud engulfs Duluth and Superior, forcing people from their beds and the evacuation of tens of thousands, while seeping chemicals create an environmental crisis that has yet to be fully determined tonight. Good evening, I'm Michelle Lee. Cleanup crews will work through the night, hoping to keep the spill under control, while National Guard troops surround a 30-square-mile area, keeping everyone, including homeowners, out for an indefinite period. It's now been almost 20 hours since a Burlington Northern train derailed, sending toxic chemicals into the Nemadji River. Some of the most dramatic pictures of this wreck have come from our Twin Cities affiliate, the only station to actually have a reporter at the site. Rick Kdlh brings us this first-hand report.
The Burlington Northern crisscrosses the Nemadji River here about a dozen times with every train, but it only took one miss to jeopardize everything. Some of the most basic elements of life are now threatened. The air, the water, is tested at every turn.
A half dozen cars have fallen completely off of the track. 3 of them, tanker trucks, right into the area near the river, one exactly in the river. These are 3 tanker trucks behind me here, and officials say at least one of them carries benzene.
The cloud is not benzene. We don't know what the cloud was made of. All we know is what the chemical was that was released, and then we had a cloud afterwards.
This tanker car landed squarely in the Nemadji River. It created an unnatural dam. Slowly, it creates a stream of its own, a toxic waterway comprised mostly of benzene. That hits the water. Other chemicals fuse with Duluth's heavy fog, creating a toxic cloud that landed squarely over Duluth today. The town vacated.
So where are you going to go?
I'm going to go up over the hill, up over Skyline.
And
breathe the fresh air, not the gas air.
Nothing could be trusted here, not the city, not the air or the water. The townspeople fled. Meanwhile, toxic waste haulers went to work on the wreckage, wearing self-contained breathing suits. They tried to sponge up the spill. It's getting safer, they say, but anyone within 30 square miles may not be allowed home for days.
Rick's pictures were shot before authorities slapped a flying ban over the area, which remains in place yet tonight. Superior officials are battening down the hatches at this hour, and their long, hard day is not nearly over. A day that began at 3:45 this morning looks no closer to ending for people in the contaminated zone. Heather Filkins is standing by right in the middle of all of tonight's activity. Heather, what is the status of this spill at this hour?
Well, Michelle, right now we have some really late-breaking news happening here down by the benzene spill here on the Nemadji River. Apparently, Bay West, who is in charge of cleaning up this spill, says there is debris collecting on 2 booms, which is keeping the benzene contained on the river. Now, if that debris continues to combine on the booms, that will mean that the booms will break and the benzene will start flowing directly into Lake Superior. Very dangerous. There is a major fish kill going on here tonight. The environmental aspects of what this benzene is doing to the environment is just untold at this point. Now, right now, we're talking about a lockout of people here as well. There is a 5-by-6 square mile radius that people are not being allowed into. That is between Highway 35 at NC, Baumgartner Road, Irondale Road, and Highway 4. Now, everything, everyone, every living, breathing human being is being kept out of that area. There are about 40 families that have been displaced. Now, the National Guard is on scene here trying to keep order. With me now is Lieutenant Jason Ray. Lieutenant Ray, tell us, what is the National Guard's function here tonight?
Basically, we're here to assist the city and state police that are holding people out of the area and try to keep things as smooth running around here as possible.
Have you been dealing with the people who were in this lockout area?
Excuse me?
Have you been dealing with the people who are in this lockout area?
I haven't personally. Some of my people have been going around with the officers and helping the people to get out of the area.
All right, thank you very much, Lieutenant Ray. Okay, National Guard is on the scene. We've got Superior Police Department, Fire Department. Everyone here is keeping people out of this area. Reporting live, I'm Heather Filkins. Michelle?
Heather, how long will this lockout continue?
Well, there is no telling, Michelle, how long this lockout will continue. Tommy Thompson has declared a state of emergency here in Douglas County. The National Guard will be on scene until he calls it over. The Coast Guard actually will call this safe. And after what's happening on the Nemadji River right now, who knows when it will be considered safe. Reporting live from the lockout area, I'm Heather Filkins. Back to you, Michelle.
Thank you very much. Well, there has been a lot of calls from people returning home tonight who say they still smell the chemical in the air. Authorities say that smell is not dangerous. Tests show levels of benzene have decreased to almost nothing. Now authorities are sitting back evaluating their performance today, and how well did they do? Lauren Bergen brings us their plan to handle a hazardous disaster.
The word of a dangerous chemical spill traveled quickly through the Douglas County Emergency Operating Center, which then alerted the Douglas County Sheriff, the Superior Police, and fire departments.
Establish a command post near the site. We
employ our incident command system.
Captain Pukimo says the county's emergency plan to handle a hazardous transportation accident went into effect at 3 a.m. The first to arrive on the scene was the fire department. They noticed the rail cars were marked hazardous material and ordered residents near the river to be evacuated. Then the first part of the battle began.
Our first thought was to contain the product, and the Coast Guard this morning spent most of our time, besides trying to coordinate things, to get some boom out there. And this is a containment boom that floats on the water and it collects the product behind it. And we were able to get 2 booms out. We put one out, the Superior Fire Department put one out, and we think they did a pretty good job of corralling the product that was moving downstream.
A vapor cloud developed, and Park Point residents, then eventually most of Duluth, was ordered to evacuate. At 3:30 this afternoon, Duluthians were allowed back on the streets, and it was time to praise the response teams.
Years and years of training goes into something like this, and they have the mock emergencies that take place from time to time, and this was the real thing. And fortunately, the training that has been done over the years has paid off.
Overall, officials say they were pleased with today's response efforts and say they will not make any revisions in the procedures in the event of a future oil spill. In Superior City Hall, I'm Laura Bergen, News 6 Nightside.
Crews will remain on the scene throughout the night and for several days. Tomorrow, crews will be cleaning up the Nemadji River with a new technique. They'll be throwing a powder called no-char into the river. The powder solidifies flammable liquids and forms pink rubber balls about the size of softballs. Those balls are then scooped out and burned. The company that distributes the powder, Black Duck Fire and Safety Equipment, says it is environmentally safe and was used successfully during the Persian Gulf War to clean up oil spills there. Authorities say there have been no reports of major injuries as a result of this spill. However, area hospitals have had a number of people call and come into the emergency room for treatment of health problems associated with this spill. St. Luke's Hospital, for example, treated about 15 patients with symptoms of benzene inhalation. 5 of them were members of the Duluth Police Department. Doctors say unless you were directly exposed to this chemical for a long period of time, you have nothing to worry about. The level of exposure for most residents of the Twin Ports was very minor.
Acute toxicity is exactly what we're talking about today with regard to a cloud that people will get in the way of an inhalation of. And that's largely respiratory symptoms, irritation, maybe in a real strong dose. There might be some fluid seeping into the lungs, but we haven't seen any of that at this point. This would probably be more the people that are directly next to the spill and getting just extremely strong concentrations.
Again, doctors say any of these symptoms should pass in a matter of hours. Decontamination is accomplished by moving an exposed person to fresh air or by washing the exposed skin with water for 15 minutes. After the cloud of benzene held them hostage for most of the day, thousands of Twin Ports residents are finally free tonight. Duluth officials lifted the evacuation ban at 3:30 this afternoon, and earlier tonight, the stragglers were taxied home by the National Guard from Central High School. The school had provided thousands of residents with relief from the benzene fumes. And how do those residents feel about the return trip home?
You guys all happy to go home? Yes! Definitely.
Of course, a select group of Superior residents nearest to the spill are still barred from their homes yet tonight. Well, the weather was a big factor today. The first welcomed rain shower fell late in the afternoon. Carol Hall is joining us now with a look ahead to tonight and tomorrow. Carol?
The rain did help, Michelle, but now we're concerned that the rain may cause additional problems with debris in the booms trying to contain the spill. Tonight, we are looking for a chance of rain. That was not the right information on the screen. A chance of rain, and that will continue again tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much, Carol. Still to come tonight, the rest of the day's news. Mike will have the latest on the Eric Lindros.
For greater comfort in about an hour.
News 6 has already been thinking ahead to tomorrow. We will have crews out the door as soon as daybreak to follow up on today's benzene spill. We'll have a full evaluation of today's efforts for you on News 6 at 6. Now, late reports indicate that it took several hours for cleanup crews to begin working at the site because protective suits weren't available. We'll get down to the bottom of that. That is for the news, or rather, that is our news for tonight. We thank you for staying up with us here on KBJR. We hope today's disaster coverage helped you through your day. For any overnight development, developments. Be sure to join Janine Johnson tomorrow for local reports during the Today Show. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, good night.
Men's wardrobe provided by Reinhold's, Miller Hill Mall, main entrance.
WGIO TV Duluth, WIRT Hibbing.
Live from the news leader of the North. This is Eyewitness News at 10 with Dennis Anderson, Steve LePage on sports, and Ken Cheatham's weather.
What appeared in the pre-dawn hours to be a beautiful ground fog in the rolling countryside would soon turn out to be a threat that sent tens of thousands of people looking for a way to escape. A train carrying chemicals had derailed, sending part of its toxic payload into the Nemadji River and launching a day of fear that residents here will never forget. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dennis Anderson. Yes, this has been quite the day in the Twin Ports. A chemical spill from a train derailment south of Superior closed down much of this area and sent residents scurrying out from under a toxic cloud. Karen Sunderman brings us the details.
At 3 a.m., a Burlington Northern train en route to Chicago derailed on a train trestle south of Superior. Several cars plunged into the Nemadji River. One, carrying benzene, ruptured. As chemicals spilled out of the car, a toxic cloud formed over the river. That cloud caused evacuations on the south and east sides of Superior that eventually spread to engulf the entire city.
Residents of South Superior is being asked to be evacuated.
Sir, we're going to have you evacuate your home. There's a chemical spill in the county.
As the wind blew the plume east, Park Point was also cleared. Then Duluth's Lakeside neighborhood.
Okay, the Lakeside area is an evacuation area. Okay. The area right now recommended is probably up towards the mall area, the airport area, up on top of the hill.
Within an hour, the wind shifted again, bringing the cloud over downtown. The evacuation process was going on in earnest. Local hotels were cleared out.
Fears for the family. We didn't want to breathe it in if we don't have to, so that's where we're going to head further north, get out of here.
Evacuees headed over the hill to shelters in Duluth and Hermantown, jamming roads out of Duluth in all directions. Eventually, parts of Renshaw, Carlton, and Cloquet were also evacuated. The interstate into the area was shut down and motorists diverted. The crisis attracted governors from both states.
I'm just very happy that people's lives and health were taken care of, and that people from Superior, led by the mayor and the commander, have done such an outstanding job.
We do want to know why the accident. People have a perfect right to live in a reasonably safe environment.
The governors are looking for federal assistance to help with any environmental cleanup. By 3:30, Duluth residents were allowed to go home. Superior followed suit at 6, but no one will forget their experience. I'm Karen Sunderman for Eyewitness News.
We now go live to the Superior City Hall where our Mike Ford is following tonight's developments. Mike, what's happening down there now that the immediate emergency is over? I guess we're not going to go down there right yet. Well, the evacuation for most residents in Duluth and Superior was ending. Cleanup work at the spill site was just beginning. The leaking rail car did bring experts from federal, state, and private agencies to a makeshift command center which is set up near the spill. Brad Ring has a follow-up now on cleanup plans at the center during the crisis. He has this story.
As thousands were crowding roads, hoping to get away from the source of the benzene cloud, workers from over 12 agencies were trying to get as close as they could. At the spill site, helicopters hovered, surveying the extent of damage done to the Nemadji River by the leaking rail car.
Pretty much travels the full distance of the Nemadji down to the boomed area near the Nemadji Golf Course. Coast Guard Station and Marine Safety Office people laid two booms this morning in that area. That looks like it's holding it in that area fairly well. From the air, it looks like an oil sheen on the water.
Using nearby Pattison State Park as a command post, officials are organizing cleanup efforts. Crews on the site concentrated most of the day on taking air and water samples to determine the levels of benzene present near the derailment. The night's efforts at the command post will center on the derailed car and the estimated 3,000 gallons of benzene still inside.
They're going to get first the one with the hole in, clean that one up. Then they've got 2 others that are in the river that they'll evaluate, dig around it, make sure there's no other leaks.
It will be pumped into tank trucks and then transported out. The damaged car, I believe, will be sealed and then removed, lifted up out of the banks.
Crews here will be working through the night on what is just the beginning of weeks and months of cleanup efforts. At the Pattison Park Command Center, Brad Ring, Eyewitness News.
All right, Brad, thank you very much. We are now ready to go live to the Superior City Hall where Mike Ford is following our developments tonight. Mike, there's been a lot going on down there all day and all night. What's happening now that the immediate danger is done, at least?
Denny, the excitement has gone down quite a bit from what we saw midday, but there is some activity here, and what's being concentrated on is building a road into the area where the train derailed and where that car is in the river right now. That is the project that's in progress, building a road to actually get to that site and get heavy equipment in. And as far as draining the car, that work might be put off until tomorrow morning now, because there is a great deal of work just in the preparation for getting that car out of the water and cleaning up this mess over the Nemadji River. So that's basically the situation from here right now, Denny, and let's go back to you.
Mike, we were told at least this afternoon that perhaps 2/3 of the car's contents had spilled. That would leave about 10,000 gallons still in the tank car. But no effort has been made yet, do I understand you right, to either extract what's left or to plug up that hole?
That gives a feel for how complicated this business is. It's not like picking up some toys from a child at play. This is serious business with a huge freight train that derailed, and of course it's not an easy matter putting it back together once it's all fallen apart. So Mike, this will take a while, Denny.
That would mean too then that residents who live near the actual toxic spill site, they're not going home tonight.
That's right. There is an area cordoned off about a mile in each direction of that spill site on the Nemadji River. That area is cordoned off and people are being kept out of that area. The rest of the areas here, of course, the evacuation order has been lifted. But for that area, yes, Denny, that's going to be quite a while now.
All right, Mike, we'll come back to you on our special report at 10:30 tonight. Thank you. That report live from Superior. Up next, we're going to have a report from Duluth Central High School where thousands gathered during today's emergency. And we'll talk live to the Duluth Police Chief, Scott Lyons, about the evacuation which took place here in Duluth. Stay with us, a lot more to come.
Eyewitness News will continue after this from Telephone Associates.
Timber Wolf, Hibbing, and Bob Almquist, Duluth.
Early this evening, Superior residents were finally able to head back home, many of them after being forced to stay on the Minnesota side of the St. Louis River, as all bridges to Superior were blocked during the day. But even as they made their way to their own neighborhoods, many found that all was not clear. This scene is near Greenwood Cemetery. National Guard troops are out there with sheriff's deputies still blocking access to certain areas that might still be in jeopardy tonight.
It's a second effort. We're going to be covering the town roads and the county highways to make sure within a security zone that we have everybody evacuated.
To be absolutely certain that no one was missed, part of the security effort tonight involved a door-to-door search in the security zone, which was set up around the spill site itself. Officials say the size of that security zone is roughly 5 miles by 6 miles. At one time today, nearly 2,000 people in Duluth took to safer ground at Central High School, one of a number of evacuation centers set up here in the city. The high school housed local people as well as hundreds of local nursing home residents, but they were more than happy to go home once they finally got word about 4 o'clock this afternoon. Bonnie Kdlh with this story.
He's on his way. He'll be here in about 5 minutes.
Organizers gave directions, and those who came seeking shelter were more than happy to take orders if it meant going back home. Local residents who could headed out on their own, while nursing home residents were helped aboard buses to shuttle them back.
It's hard to get them in and off of the bus. Some people can't walk very good, but we have to get them up the stairs, and we've lost equipment and wheelchairs and stuff that we had to look for. And it's been a hassle, but it's went okay.
I think it was fantastic. I think they were fully prepared. I think they couldn't have done a better job. I love the outside help they had too.
And they fed the kids good and gave them things to do, and I don't know, it was kind of scary, you know, for something to be happening like that in Duluth.
Since early in the morning, hundreds of people waited it out, keeping each other company in Central's auditoriums, cafeteria, and hallways. Some looking for more answers about what was happening in their community. Others simply waiting patiently, trusting others around them. Amy Weedman of the American Red Cross says things went smoothly from start to finish, and she was impressed by people helping people.
Area restaurants, medical centers, the DTA, transportation organizations, everybody worked together and didn't even hesitate 1 minute in giving help or services.
Once it was finally time to head home, no one wasted any time. Medical supplies and all, things were packed up in a matter of hours. In Duluth, I'm Bonnie Kdlh for Eyewitness News.
Superior Police and Douglas County Sheriff's deputies began evacuating residents as early as sunrise to get them away from the immediate spill area. And Duluth police were called a couple of hours later as soon as word came that a benzene fog was moving across the harbor toward Duluth and that those on Park Point would have to leave. A short time later, the evacuation order came for Lakeside, Lester Park, and eventually most of the city below the Skyline Drive. Duluth Police Chief Scott Lyons and his department went to work to help people move quickly to a place of safety. Chief Lyons joins us now to talk about today's events. Chief, city emergency crews have often prepared for such an emergency, and as the old saying goes, hoping we'll never have to use what we trained for. Did your officers find some good cooperation here in town?
Danny, we had excellent cooperation from everybody. I listened to the piece that was on prior to this, and we really did have good cooperation from everybody. We were prepared for a lot of things to happen. We were prepared to use a lot of different resources. We just were amazed at how many volunteers came out to help us move all these people and volunteer to help us make the situation.
It really sounded, Chief, as if the public didn't panic. They used pretty good common sense.
No, they did. I agree with you that everybody was cool about it, and they were as orderly as they could be to try and move that many people out of the areas we were affected.
Were there any special problems your officers may have run into during the height of the evacuation?
Some of the special problems are problems that are always on events like this. That's miscommunication, misinformation about spill site and what's happening, and so it takes some time to sort through what's truth and what's fiction.
Okay, Chief, we're going to get into it more in depth at 10:30. You're going to be staying with us and joining us again live on our special report at 10:30 tonight, so we'll be talking to you a little bit more in depth later on tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very kindly. Now, we want to remind you that today's rain helped dissipate the cloud that came in here, that benzene cloud, which kind of scared the communities. The whole ordeal ended. The ordeal ended at 3:30 in the city of Duluth and about 6 p.m. in Superior as people then started going back to their homes. Now, keep in mind, tonight at 10:30, we are presenting a special program pertaining to today's toxic chemical spill and the events that follow. So be sure to join us for Eyewitness to Fear, a toxic spill in the Twin Ports at 10:30 tonight, immediately following this newscast. Now, in other news tonight, Northwest Airlines laid off 250 of its management employees. July weekend, it should be sunny as back. All right, thank you. Up next at 10:30, we have a special program called Eyewitness to Fear, a toxic spill in the Twin Ports. We will be right back.
It's just not worth it.
WDIO-TV Duluth, WIRT Hibbing.
This is Eyewitness to Fear, a toxic spill in the Twin Ports.
Good evening once again, and welcome to this special program, Eyewitness to Fear, a toxic spill in the Twin Ports. Now, in this half hour, we will work to put today's emergency into perspective, a look at what happened here today, how people responded, and what might lie in store for the next day or so. Thousands of people were evacuated when a railroad tanker car fell into the Nemadji River, spilling benzene into the water. The car was one of 14 on a 57-car Burlington Northern train which derailed on a run to Minneapolis. We have a report now from Mike Ford. Mike Ford picks up the story from there in the first of two reports.
Happened. We have no idea.
It happened just after 3 a.m. A 14-car Burlington Northern train derailed about 5 miles south of Superior. By awful coincidence, the car carrying the benzene was the one that plunged into the Nemadji River.
Residents in this area are asked to evacuate because of a hazardous spill.
It
think you'll be able to go into work today? They got it blocked off the spill. No, they got 253.
Yeah, I heard about the spill. You can't get over Highway 2 in Superior?
No, they're going to have Highway 2 blocked off also right now.
The evacuation that followed cleared 2,000 people out of homes in South Superior and the Eloise and East End areas. For the next 10 hours, the people of Superior and Douglas County waited through a day like none in memory, wondering just how dangerous the bluish gas benzene they breathed in was, and wondering when they'd get to go home. Westman Arena and Superior Senior High housed worried evacuees.
It was just a nauseous smell. It was gross.
Those that are at the scene, by experience, they know how to cope with it, and everybody else just sit and kind of wonder and wait. But
the city-county building served as the command center.
It's no reason for panic, and that's the last thing we want to see. It is reason for us to just wait for people to stay where they're at for a little bit.
Benzene is a known carcinogen, but at these levels, we don't think we've got a problem.
Through it all, the city was part calm and part apprehensive. Most folks knew there wasn't much they could do other than evacuate or help out and volunteer. Finally, good word came at about 6 o'clock. Folks could go home. The danger was largely past.
Everybody wants to be helpful. We're just very, very happy that people's health was not severely injured because of this emergency.
Well, we have a 30-square-mile area of Douglas County still off limits tonight as deputies in the National Guard are tightening security now around that particular area. This evening, families displaced by the derailment and the toxic spill were at the roadblock along Highway 35, which is south of Superior. They tried to get back home today. Apparently at this hour tonight, some of them have still been trying to get back home, but the police there are not letting people through. Again, a 30-square-mile area of Douglas County is remaining off limits as deputies in the National Guard are tightening security. More than 40 families are stuck trying to find somewhere to stay because of the blocked off area. That area is about 5 by 6 miles, and it is centered on the derailment site. Our Mike Ford is standing by now in Superior. Mike joined us live from Superior where he has an update on the situation. Mike, can you bring us up to date now on what's happening over there as the people are still at this hour trying to determine what they can do to fix that rail car and empty it?
Well, Denny, they will stay here all night and work on this problem and keep the command post manned. And for some answers on this, let's go right to the commander from the Coast Guard who is in charge of this whole operation, and he's Commander Clayton Fust, and he joins us right now. It's been a long day, but basically we're wondering this. What's going on tonight and how late will they be there tonight?
Well, Mike, we're going to have crews out all night tonight. The responsible party, Burlington Northern Railroad, has hired contractors. They're going to work around the clock to get the leaks stopped, to get the tank cars pumped off, and to try to get some of the product that's in the river out of the water.
You said before we came on that this is not over. This situation's not over by any means. When do you consider it over?
Well, it's not going to be over until we get the product out of those 3 tank cars, get the tank cars back on the tracks.
Okay. You've had some time to think about this a little bit now. Is there anything that the Coast Guard or that any of these agencies could have done differently or would have done differently if they haven't happened one more time?
Well, I'm sure we're going to have a big debriefing afterwards, and everybody's going to give their ideas about what could have been done better. But myself, standing here tonight, after about 15 hours on this operation, I'm just thankful that everybody got through this without getting hurt. We had a lot of people inconvenienced today, but no one got seriously hurt, and that's the main thing. And I'm pretty happy about that.
You're looking forward to a good night's sleep, I bet.
Yes, I am, for a couple hours.
Okay. All right, Danny, right now we'll get ready to go back to you. That was Lieutenant Commander or Commander Clayton Fust of the U.S. Coast Guard, and we'll have more from Superior perhaps tomorrow morning, and of course as the situation goes on, but right now let's go back to you.
Mike, certainly the people in Superior, particularly the people who live around the spill site, they're kind of anxious, wondering, when exactly can they go back to their homes. They're not setting a timetable here of anything, then. That's what I'm hearing. Is that correct? No timetable whatsoever.
That's right. It's early enough now in this stage that there is no exact timetable for getting folks back in their homes, but that's something that, of course, is a top priority. But actually, at this point tonight, they're still putting a road into the site to get heavy equipment in that area, and so that is an indication of how early a stage this is right now. So it will be quite a while for the folks who live close to that site, Denny.
Okay, Mike, it sounds like an awful lot of bull work before they can even get to the site to accomplish what they need to do. Thank you very much. Mike Ford, live from Superior. Karen Sunderman now reports on the situation here in Duluth as it unfolded today. Karen?
By 8 a.m., Duluth began its evacuation ordeal. Buses and all available transportation were called out to take people off of Park Point, including residents of 2 nursing homes. As the plume moved east with the wind, the Lakeside neighborhood was next.
We're evacuating Lower Lakeside, at least up to Glenwood for now, and preferably over the hill.
Police say residents were orderly and calm as they packed their bags and headed over the hill.
Started getting kind of ready, but we were really taking our time. And by the time we left, it was about
quarter to 10.
Quarter to 10, but we really took our time. But by the time we got out of the house, it was
We shut all the windows, so we couldn't smell anything, but when we came outside, it was
bad.
Very bad.
Then the wind shifted and pushed the cloud over downtown. Businesses and hotels closed up shop, and all non-essential personnel at City Hall were sent home. In all, thousands of people were asked to evacuate, and downtown was a ghost town.
It's really dead, you know, seeing no one here or whatever, and waiting patiently to get out of here to go up in the hill.
Eventually, all of Duluth, south of Skyline Drive, was asked to evacuate, including West Duluth and Fond du Lac. Traffic flowing up Mesaba Avenue was bumper to bumper for more than an hour as people followed those instructions. At 3:30, the flow was reversed.
He's on his way. He'll be here in about 5 minutes.
In Duluth, Karen Sunderman, Eyewitness News.
Now again, I want to update you folks who live in the rural Superior area who may be affected by the work still going on tonight in the road building they're doing toward the tank car site itself. A 30-square-mile area of Douglas County is still off limits at this hour. It will be all night tonight as deputies and National Guard tighten security, families displaced by the derailment and toxic spill at a roadblock along Highway 35 south of town. They are trying to get back home. They can't.
This order just came down. That's what the National Guard is doing.
Did they say when they were going to let you go back?
No, they haven't let us know yet. We were stranded in Duluth for a while.
More than 40 families are stuck finding somewhere to stay because of the blocked off area. Once again, I want to remind you the area is 5 by 6 miles, a pretty good sized section of land, and it is centered on the derailment site itself. Now, let's get an idea of how the gas moved through the Twin Ports area, the path that it took, and why so many people were sent scrambling today. It all started in the early hours of the morning, about 5 miles south of Superior, where the railroad tracks crossed the Nemadji River just west of Highway 35. The cloud followed the path of the river, making its way toward Lake Superior. Now, once it hit the open water, it moved across to Park Point, then across the lake, heading toward Duluth. Once it hit the shore of Duluth, the blue cloud and haze headed both directions, as you can see here by the arrows, up and down the shoreline. Each shift in its direction sent people scrambling for evacuation centers, which were set up at a number of locations in both Superior and Duluth. The full effects of the toxic spill into Lake Superior and the Nemadji River probably won't be known for several days. But today, the question on people's minds is this: will it affect the water I drink? Well, at one point, the Lake Superior intake to the Cloquet water supply was shut down as a precautionary measure. But officials with the State Department of Health say the water in the Duluth Superior area is safe to drink.
The State Health Department, they will be sending some of their public water supply people up to the Duluth area tomorrow to collect samples, just as an extra precaution to double check to make sure that there's nothing to be concerned about. But given the location of the intakes and the fact that this is a volatile chemical, what we're really concerned about is in the air. They don't feel right now that there's any high levels to be found in the public water supplies.
And Jones says he'd almost have to drink today's water for a lifetime to see any negative health symptoms. By the way, there will be some testing going on in that water tomorrow by the state. A lot of people had questions today about any effect the chemical spill and resulting vapor would have on them physically. Some of you may have experienced symptoms like Dr. Kurt Martin describes.
But in reality, the benzene toxicity is such that it's absorbed very quickly in an inhalation situation, and people would tend to get their symptoms rather promptly. Symptoms would include mostly nervous system symptoms such as headache, or in bigger doses confusion, and in massive doses even unconsciousness. But you'd have to be almost right next to the spilled tank car.
Dr. Martin says benzene exposure can have a negative impact given long-term continuous exposure, but it shouldn't be a problem given today's one-time dose.
There certainly is known to be some relation to cancer formation in people who are exposed many, many times over a long period, such as certain industrial workers. I mean, that's well documented. But that hasn't been documented, to my understanding, for the acute one-time doses. And this is certainly what this is. It's just an acute dose. It's not over weeks or months.
Dr. Martin worked today in St. Luke's emergency room and said initially there was a flurry of activity involving some children and several police officers. There are about 22 people, in fact, in both cities that did seek treatment. Other than that, very few experienced the kinds of problems that took them to the hospital. Now, as the winds and the cloud of fumes moved, people were affected far beyond the Twin Ports. Some people were evacuated as far south as Renshaw and Cloquet and as far north as Two Harbors. You can see the cloud hanging in the horizon. This home video was shot by Eric Allen from the breakwater in Two Harbors. People trying to drive south toward Duluth were stopped by Two Harbors police officers and state troopers. Highway 61 was blocked to southbound traffic, and motorists had to find alternate routes as they closed all roads into Duluth and Superior. Roads were opened for evacuating, but not for incoming traffic. There were smiles all around when officials lifted the evacuation order in Duluth this afternoon. Close to 2,000 people holed up at Central High School, just one of a number of evacuation centers in the Twin Ports. Residents from nearby were joined there by hundreds of nursing home people in Duluth. They were more than happy to be going home, and as you can imagine, it was some task getting some 800 nursing home residents along with medical supplies in and out of the school. The emergency ended here in Duluth about 3:30 or 3:40 this afternoon, and the all clear was sounded for folks in Superior at 6 p.m. Police in both Superior and in Duluth, along with Douglas County Sheriff's officers and officers in Carleton County, all pitched in today to alert people of the need to evacuate and to oversee an orderly movement to evacuation centers. It's a job they've been trained to do and thankfully don't have to use that training very often. To move people out of a city the size of Duluth does take some doing. Police Chief Scott Lyons now joins us live. Chief, some people have been wondering why the civil defense sirens were not used today. Do you know of any reason?
Yeah, I know the exact reason, Denny. We didn't deem the situation appropriate enough to use the sirens. We didn't want people to panic. We didn't consider it to be a life-threatening situation. We wanted to use the media to get the word out and get our officers out on the street to get the word out and make people understand that it was what we wanted was an orderly departure from the area.
Are you convinced, Chief, that it worked that way, that it was orderly?
I think it was. From every indication I have, it worked fine.
Were there any reports of looting or other troubles in neighborhoods once people left?
No, we had a plan that we enacted for that immediately after people left.
We have a chance now, Scott, to look back and reflect on the day's events. Is there anything your department should have done differently or you would have done differently in retrospect?
We're going to evaluate. We have debriefing on this whole exercise. We'll have it done in the next couple of days. I haven't found anything yet, Denny, nothing that stands out glaring that we consider a problem. Everybody cooperated just tremendously in our community.
Traffic was literally bumper to bumper, and I know I was driving into the TV station fairly early this morning, and there were cars, one on top of the other almost, as people moved either to announced evacuation centers or out of town. Were you able to direct the evacuation in a relatively short time span, or was this kind of a long ordeal for you?
We anticipated it was going to take some time, especially the few roads that we had to use to get out of the city. But I thought it went fairly well. Our officers on the streets thought it went fairly well too.
Can you describe for us, and I think it would be interesting if you could, the plan that you put into action, how you distributed your police officers, and what they were told to do once they got into the field?
We opened our command post somewhere around 5:30, 6 o'clock this morning with the incident commander, Lieutenant Bob Larson from our department. And he and our Bob Trelane, our emergency management person, coordinated the whole effort. So we had everybody going by 6:30, 7 o'clock. We started our evacuation of Park Point. And in turn, we brought in all the other city departments and county and state agencies into our command center, and we worked out a plan to make sure we had some idea what was going to happen. We knew that the wind was going to be a problem for us, and so we were anticipating what would happen if wind shifted on us. So when it shifted and brought the cloud back downtown into Duluth, we had to make those quick decisions to move the people out of there.
You did put a call out for extra help then?
Yeah, we brought in about 40 additional officers. The Sheriff's Office brought in about 20 additional officers. We had off-duty firemen, firefighters came in. We had a variety of different people respond to this.
Once people got back home then, early or late afternoon rather, did you kind of go back to a normal shift? Do you have a normal strength now tonight, for example?
We're a little bit above strength right now because of just some other issues that are going on, but yeah, we got it back down to, we had to get some people home. They'd been working all night and all day. They're very tired, and we just had to relieve some of the people.
All right, sir. Thank you very kindly for joining us. You've had a very long day, and I thank you for spending the last hour with us up here at the Observation Hill. We'll be checking back with you tomorrow, make certain all things are still on the status quo tomorrow. So, Duluth Police Chief Scott Lyons, thank you. Appreciate your time tonight. So the situation as it now stands is this. Residents of Superior, Duluth, Cloquet, Carlton, and other areas are back in their homes tonight. The emergency situation for most of us is over. At the scene of the toxic spill, crews worked to plug the 1 foot by 1.5 foot size hole in the tanker car probably tomorrow. At this hour, they are building a road into the site so they can start the work. They still have to remove what is left inside that car. It's possible the car could be pulled out sometime tomorrow, too. Now, for those folks who live close to the accident site, you will probably not be going back to your homes until tomorrow, or certainly whenever officials give the all clear. Fortunately, there have been no serious accidents to report, none whatsoever. A couple dozen people went to area hospitals complaining of dizziness, some sore throats, sore eyes, and St. Luke's Hospital did see one moderate injury, but from a human standpoint, it worked out very well. Be sure to join Bonnie Kdlh first thing tomorrow morning for the latest on the situation and what authorities expect to accomplish tomorrow at the spill site. We'll keep you informed with reports again from that spill site. We want to thank you for staying with us for so much of this day, as we've been telecasting all day for the past 12 hours now to keep you informed. This has been Eyewitness to Fear, a toxic spill in the Twin Ports. From all of us here at Eyewitness News, thank you, good night, and be kind.
This has been Eyewitness to Fear, a toxic spill in the Twin Ports.
It was supposed to be settled by the highest court in the land.